Organically, there are 2 regiments of 75 millimeter guns in the infantry division. Each regiment consists of 2 battalions. Each battalion consists of a headquarters battery and 3 gun batteries. Their location in the march columns of the division depends upon their prospective employment. They go into action early to support the action of the infantry. A gun battery consists of the battery headquarters, the firing battery, and the maintenance section. The maintenance section normally marches with the battalion combat train when action is imminent. The battery headquarters consists of the battery detail, the first sergeant, and the battery clerk. The detail is subdivided into the party and the remainder of the detail. The party accompanies the battery commander on reconnaissance. The remainder of the detail furnishes the instrument and signal personnel and materiel necessary to control the fire of the battery. Each of the 4 gun sections of the firing battery consists of a gun and a caisson with their limbers drawn by 6-horse teams. The 5th section of the firing battery is a caisson section, consisting of 2 caissons with their limbers and teams. This section carries about 200 rounds of additional ammunition for the battery. The Red First Army has succeeded in effecting a landing at Baltimore and is endeavoring to secure the adjacent country prior to the arrival of Blue forces. The Blue First Corps, which has mobilized in the area Frederick, Libertytown, Newmarket, receives orders to operate north of the south branch of the Patapsco River, driving the enemy east of the north branch of that river and securing the crossings. The 1st Division, marching in 1 column, precedes the remainder of the 1st Corps by 1 day's march via Taylorsville and the Liberty Turnpike. As the advance guard of the division approaches the north branch, it is stopped by machine gun fire from across the river. Unable to force a crossing, it deploys on the high ground west of the river. From prisoners, it is learned that the enemy force consists of the Red 6th Brigade with a light artillery regiment attached. It is holding the high ground between Locust Run and Falls Run. The division commander decides to attack, developing the Red north flank. The 2nd Brigade on the left will deliver the main blow. The 2nd Field Artillery supports this brigade. The 1st Battalion of the 2nd Field Artillery supports the 3rd Infantry. During a halt shortly after contact has been gained, the battery commander of Battery A receives oral orders to report to the head of the battalion with his party. When action is imminent, reconnaissance parties are sent forward early to facilitate the prompt reconnaissance of positions. As the battery commander and his party mount up, the executive comes forward from his position at the head of the firing battery. The battery commander tells the executive to take charge of the battery and to continue on in the march column. He then moves forward with his party and his reconnaissance officer. Upon arrival at the head of the battalion, the party is dismounted and posted in the column. The officers join the battalion S1 and await the arrival of the parties of the other batteries. S1 explains that the battalion commander is forward with the regimental commander on reconnaissance. He then points out details of the situation on his map. Meanwhile, the battalion commander has heard the regimental order. He has reconnoitered the battalion position and selected an observation post. While awaiting the arrival of the battery commanders, he discusses the situation with members of his staff and assembles the data for his battalion order. As the battery commanders approach, the battalion S2 is sent to meet them and to direct them to the battalion observation post. The battery commander of A battery disposes his party under cover and proceeds dismounted with his reconnaissance officer. When all battery officers have assembled at the observation post, S2 explains the situation, pointing out locations on the map and on the ground. He then designates the battalion reference point. The battery commanders then report to the battalion commander, who issues his oral order for the attack. The battalion will support the 3rd Infantry. The normal zone for all batteries will be the zone of action of the 3rd Infantry. The gun position and observation post of each battery will be as indicated on the battalion commander's map, or as pointed out on the ground. Instructions regarding anti-aircraft defense, communication, and the location of the battalion command post are included. A tentative location for Battery A's observation post is indicated on the ridge near that of the battalion. The battalion reconnaissance officer gives instructions to the battery reconnaissance officers regarding the details of the survey work to be performed, the location of the battalion base point, and information required to facilitate fire direction. After receiving the battalion order, the battery commander rejoins his party. He leads them mounted to the vicinity designated for his observation post. Accompanied by his reconnaissance officer, he quickly reconnoiters a suitable observation post on this ridge. He then issues his instructions to his reconnaissance officer concerning the organization of the observation post, the initial data to be secured, the method of laying, the tentative gun position, and the communication to be established. Rejoining his party, which has dismounted under cover, the battery commander directs the instrument sergeant and the signal sergeant to report to the reconnaissance officer. He mounts, and with 2 scout corporals, instrument operator number 2, and his bugler, he rides to the vicinity of the gun position on reconnaissance. After selecting the battery position, the battery commander points out the positions for each of the guns. Scout Corporal number 1 is given instructions to return to the rendezvous and conduct the detail in the battery to the position. The instrument operator sets up the executive's aiming circle in a position convenient for laying the guns. The battery commander shows Scout Corporal number 2 the positions of the guns. He indicates the direction of fire, the method of laying, the limber position, and a position for the anti-aircraft machine guns. Meanwhile, at the observation post, the reconnaissance officer is transmitting the battery commander's orders to the instrument sergeant and signal sergeant. He designates a position selected for the led horses and outlines the survey work to be performed. The instrument sergeant sets up the aiming circle and begins to compute the initial firing data. The signal sergeant leaves to ride back and meet the detail. While the battery commanders were receiving orders from the battalion commander, the batteries were conducted to a rendezvous point by the battalion executive. Here, all batteries dismount and await orders. Scout Corporal number 1 arrives and reports to the executive of Battery A. He transmits the battery commander's instructions to bring forward the remainder of the detail and the firing battery by a designated route to the battery position. The executive directs the assistant executive to follow with the firing battery. Guided by the scout corporal, he goes forward with the detail. When passing road intersections at which the firing battery may lose the way, men from the detail are used as route markers to ensure that the battery takes the correct road. As the detail nears the gun position, it is met by the signal sergeant. He divides it into 2 groups. One group is led to the observation post by Scout Corporal number 1. The signal sergeant accompanies the other group to the gun position. As soon as the gun position was indicated to him by Scout Corporal number 1, the executive rode ahead to it. From Scout Corporal number 2, he receives the battery commander's instructions regarding the positions of the guns, the direction of fire, the method of laying, the limber positions, and the locations for anti-aircraft machine guns. He then rides back to meet the battery. Upon arrival at the gun position, the signal sergeant issues instructions establishing wire communication. One wire reel at once starts laying the necessary wire lines to the battery observation post. The executive leads the battery into position. Difficult terrain is avoided. The battery is placed in double section column, the pieces and caissons of each section abreast. The approach to the position is made under cover of trees, in order to avoid telltale wheel tracks which might reveal the gun position to hostile aircraft. The limbers are taken to their positions under cover by the first sergeant. As the battery goes into action, the infantry is moving to its positions for the attack. The artillery must protect the infantry during the development and deployment of the division. At the observation post, the organization proceeds under direction of the instrument sergeant. The battery commander's telescope and the range finders are set up while communication with the gun position is established. At the gun position, the executive lays the guns using data sent from the observation post. Wire from the battalion command post is brought in and is connected to the battery switchboard. Auxiliary communication is established between the observation post and the gun position. In case wire communication is interrupted, visual teams use either flags or signal lamps. The battery commander registers the battery on the base point, firing a number of rounds and observing the bursts to secure the data required for fire direction. Meanwhile, the reconnaissance officer completes his survey work. He locates accurately on the map the positions of the base piece and base point. The anti-aircraft machine guns of the battery go into position on a nearby crest. The battery is now in position, ready to execute such fire missions as may be ordered. A staff officer from the battalion arrives at the battery observation post with an overlay and a schedule of fires for the attack. The battery commander hands the overlay to his reconnaissance officer, who starts at once to prepare the necessary firing data, checking over with the battalion staff officer the information contained on the overlay. Artillery fire responds to infantry requests. An infantry officer indicates to the battalion liaison officer an enemy machine gun, which is holding up his advance. He requests immediate fire support. The liaison officer reports the target by radio to his battalion commander, stating that he is able to observe the fire from his position. The battalion commander receives the radio message and designates Battery A to fire the mission. The battery will be given a through telephone circuit to the battalion SCR 161 radio, by which communication is established with the liaison officer. The battery is at once notified by telephone. With initial data sent by the battalion, the battery opens fire with a battery salvo. The liaison officer, warned by radio, senses the rounds and reports to battalion. The battery commander receives the sensings. He makes the necessary corrections in deflection and elevation, completes his adjustments, and goes into fire for effect. The shells are fired at the target as quickly as possible. The target area is covered by a rapid burst of fire, putting the hostile machine gun out of action. At H hour, the attack is launched. All batteries deliver the fires ordered by the battalion commander. Concentrations are delivered for 5 minutes on the forward objectives 1, 2, and 3. At H hour plus 5 minutes, all batteries suspend firing for 3 minutes, while concentrations are lifted to rear objectives. At H hour plus 8 minutes, firing resumes, covering objectives 1, 4, and 5. 2 minutes later, A battery suspends its fire on objective number 1, and on call from the infantry, lifts its concentration at H plus 13 to objective number 6. A message from the battalion commander warns the battery commander to prepare for prompt forward displacement and to join the battalion commander at Haight for reconnaissance. He issues instructions to the instrument sergeant to have the party ready for prompt movement and to warn the executive. Members of the detail who are not on duty are assembled under cover near the observation post. Led horses for those on duty are ready. A telephone message informs the battery commander that the battery is to move forward at once. While the command post is going out of action, the battery commander prepares to go with his party to Haight. From here, he will go forward with the battalion commander on reconnaissance. The battery commander issues the necessary instructions for the movement to the reconnaissance officer, designating crossroad 659 as a rendezvous, where he will conduct the battery and there await further instructions. He mounts and with his party goes to meet the battalion commander. The executive, warned by the battery commander, has limbered the battery and is ready to move. The reconnaissance officer, arriving at the battery position, gives the executive the battery commander's instructions for the movement. He then precedes the firing battery with the remainder of the detail to the rendezvous area at crossroads 659. Upon arrival at Haight, the battery commander reports to the battalion commander. Representatives from the other batteries have reported. All move forward with the battalion party to reconnoiter the new battalion area. They move by defilated routes, which later will be used by the firing batteries. En route, the battalion reconnaissance officer who has been forward joins the battalion commander. He reports the results of his reconnaissance and recommends a location for the battalion observation post. Guided by his reconnaissance officer, the battalion commander and the battery commanders arrive at the selected observation post. Here, the battalion commander gives orders to each battery commander or his representative covering his mission and position. A battery's commander leaves to rejoin his party. Scout Corporal number 1 is sent back to the battery rendezvous at crossroads 659 to guide the firing battery and the remainder of the detail forward. The battery commander and remainder of the party then complete the reconnaissance of the battery position. As before, the observation post is established. The initial data is computed. Prior to the arrival of the reconnaissance officer, his duties are taken over by the battery commander and the instrument sergeant. Without delay, the battery occupies its new position, well up in the forward area, and opens fire. With the guns in close support, our infantry continues its advance, driving back the demoralized hostile forces.